This happened a few months ago. I was a history teacher turned amateur historian. I got an invite to explore an abandoned military base. I thought it would be a cool chance to uncover some forgotten stories. I arrived with my camera and notebook, ready to document everything. The first night felt quiet. I set up my camp in the overgrown paths that had swallowed the base. It was strange. The sounds of nature were there, but they felt different. Around midnight, I wandered into an old building. I saw a walkie-talkie on a table. I picked it up and heard crackling. I thought I heard whispers. Maybe it was just static playing tricks on me. I shrugged it off, but a chill ran down my spine. As the days passed, things got weird. I kept hearing whispers. At first, I thought it was my mind playing tricks. It felt like someone was watching me. I saw movement in my peripheral vision, but when I turned, nothing was there. My heart raced every time a branch snapped in the quiet. I tried to shake it off, but it got harder. One day, I found old documents in one of the buildings. They were classified and talked about experiments. The details were confusing. Something about testing human responses to fear. I wanted to connect the dots, but every time I thought I understood, another piece vanished. I couldn't help but wonder if the air in that place was messing with my mind, that I started to feel lost. The whispers grew louder at night. I wanted to believe they were just the wind, but my instincts told me something was wrong. It felt like something was there, closing in on me. I was terrified. I could sense it wanted me to uncover something dark. On my last night, I was packing up, but I couldn't shake the urge to explore deeper. I walked through the hallways. Shadows danced around me. I turned a corner and froze. I saw a figure standing there. I blinked, and it was gone. I called out, but there was no answer. My heart raced. What was happening? Was I really seeing this? I didn't expect to leave with no answers. All I wanted was clarity. As I walked back to my camp, I heard it again, clear as day: leave. My blood ran cold. I stumbled back. Was someone there with me? I turned around. I scanned the area, but I was alone. Or so I thought. I got back to my tent, my mind racing. The whispers haunted me even after I left. I had never experienced anything like this. I couldn't shake the feeling that the base had secrets too dark to reveal completely. I still think about it. I wonder if it wanted to share its stories, or if it was warning me. I don't know. But I'll never forget that feeling of being watched. It was like the base itself was alive, and it didn't want me there. The sun rose on my last day at the base, but I felt heavy. I wanted to leave, yet something urged me to stay. I reluctantly decided to go back to the old building where I found the walkie-talkie. Maybe I'd missed something. I grabbed my camera and notebook and steeled myself for whatever I might find. When I arrived, the place felt different in the daylight. The shadows weren't as thick, and I could see the peeling paint and broken windows clearly. My anxiety didn't fade, though. I stepped inside and was immediately struck by the silence. No whispers. I held my breath, listening. Just as I was about to give up, I heard a soft click. I turned my head sharply. Was that the walkie-talkie? It was coming from a small room at the end of the hallway. I approached slowly, my heart pounding. I peered inside. The room was filled with old equipment, most of it covered in dust. And there it was, the walkie-talkie, sitting on a desk. It seemed to pulse with a strange energy. I picked it up again, my fingers trembling. This time when I pressed the button, I whispered, "Hello?" Static crackled, then a voice emerged, trembling but clear. "Do you see them?" My stomach dropped. Who was them? I felt a chill seep into my bones. I dropped the walkie-talkie, backing away slowly. I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut, echoing through the empty building. I froze, dread washing over me. Something was keeping me there. Panic set in quickly. I banged on the door, desperate to escape. That's when I noticed something out of the corner of my eye, a flicker of movement outside the broken windows. I glanced outside. I couldn't see anything, just trees swaying in the wind, but the tension in the air was suffocating. I turned back toward the room, my breath quickening. I needed to break the door down. I kicked it as hard as I could, but it barely budged. Just as I was preparing for another attempt, a low voice whispered my name, haunting and familiar. "Leave now," it prompted again, more urgent this time. My heart raced. It was the same voice I had heard before. Suddenly, I felt the atmosphere shift. Shadows thickened, swirling around me like a mist, and I heard a whispering chorus, rising and falling like a dark song. I stumbled back, falling to the ground. This time, the whispers filled my head, drowning out my thoughts. "Help us! Help us before it's too late." I couldn't comprehend it all. I scrambled to my feet and lunged for the door, despair gripping me as I slammed into it once more. To my surprise, it opened without resistance, spilling me into the daylight. I didn't look back as I ran, driven by an instinct I couldn't fully understand. Outside, the air felt different, clearer, but heavy with something unshakable. I finally made it to my camp. The whispers faded, but their echoes lingered in my mind. I glanced back at the building. I wanted to forget it all, but I knew I couldn't. Whatever I experienced wouldn't let me go. I grabbed my gear and started packing. Then, I noticed my camera was on, recording. I checked the footage, fingers trembling. My breath hitched when I saw it. Shadowy figures darting behind me in the video, faces contorted in silent screams. I flipped the camera off, breathless. What had I caught? I needed answers, but as I loaded my car, I glanced back at the base one last time. I felt it watching me, more alive than ever. I knew I had to go back. Something deep within me demanded I uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The drive back felt like a blur. My mind raced, replaying the echoes from the building. Someone or something was waiting for me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was in the middle of something bigger than I ever imagined. The sunlight seemed harsh now, illuminating details I had missed before. The landscape whipped past, familiar yet shrouded in a new sense of dread that I checked the time. It was early afternoon when I returned to the base, but the air felt charged, heavy with anticipation. I parked my car a distance away, my heart thudding in my chest. I grabbed my camera and notebook once more, determined to document everything that happened. I swallowed hard and made my way to the building, the shadows creeping back as I approached. Once inside, the stale air enveloped me like a suffocating blanket. I could feel a pull a guide, almost. I followed the familiar path to the room with the walkie-talkie, but this time, I was ready for anything. The door creaked eerily as I pushed it open, and my eyes locked onto the desk. The walkie-talkie sat there, untouched, as if waiting for me. Before I could even think, I took a deep breath and picked it up. My pulse quickened as I pressed the button again and held it to my lips. I'm back. My voice cracked as it echoed in the silence. Static filled the air again. You shouldn't interfere. A voice hissed, low and menacing. It sent a shiver down my spine. You don't know the cost. I dropped the walkie-talkie in shock, then bent to pick it up again. Fear coursed through me. What do you mean? What cost? There was a pause, and then the voice returned, softer this time. The others, they cannot be freed. Others? I felt a wave of confusion and dread sweep over me. I knew the building held secrets, but this? I locked my gaze on the door, half expecting it to slam shut. Instead, I heard something scuttling in the corner of the room. I turned sharply, heart racing. A bundle of old military documents lay strewn across the floor, half hidden under a rotting desk. I stepped closer, curiosity eclipsing my fear. The papers were faded, but the names and dates were still legible. I recognized some from history books. Military operations, secret experiments, everything appeared connected to the whispers. Anger and unease bubbled inside of me. Whatever happened here, it was bigger than personal anguish. It was alive, a tangle of sorrow and desperation. Then, as the papers caught the light, my eyes widened. I saw sketches, crude yet haunting, of the figures from my video, twisted, anguished faces. They were real. My mind raced, connecting the dots. The walkie-talkie, the shadows, the voices, it wasn't just a ghost story. It was a warning. Suddenly, a cold breeze swept through the room, extinguishing the fragile warmth. I turned, catching movement. I swear I could see a figure just beyond the door, a fleeting shadow disappearing around the corner. My breath hitched, and instinct took over. I needed to get out. As I backed away, I glanced again at the papers, my stomach churning. I had to know more, but what had just happened? The very air felt charged, and I hesitated, torn between fleeing and uncovering the last stone of this mystery. That S when I heard it again, a whisper, chilling and urgent. You can't leave. I froze. Whatever I had unearthed was now unwilling to let me go. I had to find out who was keeping me in this nightmare. I turned back towards the hallway, ready to follow the shadow. I didn't know what I'd find, but I understood now. The hunt for truth had become a race against time. As I stepped into the hallway, the air turned cold, making me shiver. I glanced around, my mind still reeling from what I had just discovered. The whispers seemed to swirl around me, almost tangible that I moved cautiously, each step echoing from the cracked walls. The shadows flickered, dancing like they were alive. I realized I was not alone anymore. Whatever shadow had slipped away was lurking nearby. With my heart pounding, I turned a corner. A faint light glowed ahead, seeming to pulse like a heartbeat. I followed it, hoping for clarity but feeling the opposite. The voice echoing in my mind tangled with the fear gripping me. The others, they cannot be freed. What did that even mean? The source of the light was a door, slightly ajar. I hesitated, adrenaline coursing through my veins. Should I push it open? I took a deep breath and pressed the door open gently. It creaked, and I stepped inside. The room was lined with screens, dusty and flickering. The soft hum of machinery mixed with the static that still buzzed in my ears. My fingers grazed the surface of one of the screens, and images sprang to life. They were blurred, flickering between scenes of experiments and soldiers, the same twisted faces from the sketches I had seen. My stomach twisted as a sense of violation consumed me. Suddenly, the monitor crackled, and a voice broke through, familiar and chilling. "You shouldn't be here." It was the same menacing whisper from the walkie-talkie. I spun around, instincts kicking in. My back pressed against the wall, readying myself to flee if needed. "What do you want from me?" I shouted, my voice filled with defiance, but it trembled at the end. Agreeing with my fear, I could sense a presence moving behind me. The door slammed shut, trapping me. Panic tightened in my chest. I slammed my hands against it, praying to break free. "Help! Someone!" But no answer came. Then, I heard the unmistakable scuttling sound again. It was drawing closer. I turned back to the screens, frantically searching for something, anything that could help me understand the nightmarish reality I was witnessing. One screen flashed brighter, displaying a date highlighted in red, 1983. Below it, a word I recognized, Project Echo. Suddenly, a flood of memories rushed back. A report I'd read years ago, hushed whispers amongst former agents. The project was said to involve combat against the unseen and unexplained. Were these the others I had to worry about? The scuttling noise grew louder, and shadows accumulated in the corners of my vision. I had no choice. I had to figure this out. But could I? What happened to them? I shouted into the void, hoping for an answer. The room grew darker, shadows swallowing any semblance of light. My heart raced even faster now. As I turned back to the screens, I saw something moving, figures emerging from the static, their eyes glowing, their forms twisting like the sketches. I was going to find out what lay beneath this darkness, but I was terrified of the price I might pay. With newfound resolve, I stepped toward the nearest screen, determined to uncover the truth. That's when I heard the whispers rise to a deafening crescendo. "You should not have come here." Everything fell silent, and I felt the cold touch of unseen fingers brush across my neck. My breath stopped. I was not in control anymore. The chill coursed through me as I stood frozen, feeling the weight of dread in the silence. When the electrical hum faded, I was left alone with my thoughts and the shadows creeping closer. I strained to hear anything beyond my own heartbeat, but only stillness greeted me. Suddenly, the screens flickered violently, and a jarring noise erupted, forcing me to wince. I squinted at the nearest monitor. This time, it wasn't static, it played an old video. Soldiers in uniforms stood in a makeshift lab. Their faces were obscured by flickering shadows, but I could feel their fear even through the screen. One soldier was yelling, pointing toward something off camera. I leaned closer, trying to catch a glimpse of what they were so terrified of. Just as I thought I saw movement, the screen went fuzzy, then black. I cursed under my breath. Frustration boiled inside me. I had to see more. I turned to the next monitor, desperately hoping for answers. This one displayed a grainy image of a dark hallway. A group of men moved cautiously, their flashlights piercing through the gloom. Is this what I'm dealing with? I thought. Was it possible the same horrors they faced were still lurking around me? Then, something caught my eye, a figure moving in the background of the video. Something tall and thin, with elongated limbs that seemed to bend at unnatural angles. A chill danced down my spine. "What are you?" I whispered. The figure slipped into the darkness, and my stomach dropped. Before I could process what I had just seen, the door behind me rattled violently. I whirled around, my heart racing as I faced the sound. It sounded like something or someone was trying to get in. I grabbed a nearby metal chair and prepared to defend myself. My mind raced with possibilities. Was it an agent? One of those others? As the door shook again, I noticed a spotlight flickering around the room. It was responding to the commotion. The light flashed on the nearest screen again, revealing an emergency alert. Containment breach in Sector 3. Panic surged within me. I hadn't chosen to be a part of this nightmare. And yet, here I was. The rattling grew louder and then stopped. The door slowly creaked open under the weight of the darkness outside, revealing a figure silhouetted against the hallway light. It stepped inside, and I raised the chair, ready to swing. My mind raced. "Stop!" A voice shouted, cracking like thunder. "I'm not one of them." Lowering the chair in shock, I recognized the voice. It was Martin, a former colleague I thought lost in the project years ago. "What are you doing here?" I gasped, relief flooding through me. "I can explain," he hurried, glancing back at the blackness behind him. "But we don't have much time. They're coming." Before I could respond, the ground trembled beneath us, and the overhead lights flickered more violently. The shadows pooled in every corner, and I felt the pressure of unseen eyes bearing down on me. Whatever secrets this place held were on the verge of being unleashed. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. Martin's eyes widened. "We need to leave. Now." Then, without warning, the screens blared to life again, showing the distorted forms of the figures from earlier faces twisted in agony. "We cannot be freed," they echoed in unison, their voices sending chills of dread through me that I grabbed Martin's arm just as the lights went out entirely. A suffocating pitch darkness enveloped us. I took a step back, terror stealing my breath, but he pulled me forward into the void. "Keep moving," he urged. Somewhere in that darkness, the whispers returned, more insistent than before. "You are too late." My pulse quickened. If we didn't escape, I feared what might find us next. I knew one thing for certain. The real nightmare was only beginning. I stumbled as Martin pulled me through the suffocating darkness. My heart raced as I tried to keep pace. The overhead emergency lights flickered back to life, casting an eerie glow against the walls. In that momentary light, I could see panic reflected in Martin's face. "Which way?" I shouted over the chaos, my voice trembling. My mind was racing through every horror story I'd heard about this place. All that time, locked away, buried in bureaucratic silence. Had those stories been true? What had they been hiding? "Follow me," Martin said, his voice urgent. He tugged me toward a narrow hallway that led deeper into the facility. I hesitated, the instinct to run clawing at my mind. The familiar chill settled in my bones again, gnawing at my courage. But I forced myself to move. The pull of the unknown stronger than my feared. As we fled down the corridor, the air thickened. Shadows flickered in the corner of my eye, teasing me with glimpses of movement. I focused on Martin's back, trying to ignore the growing sense of dread that coiled around my thoughts. We dashed past several heavy doors, each one an invitation to horrors I couldn't bear to contemplate. Then, I caught something, a low growl reverberating through the walls. My skin prickled. Instinctively, I glanced back, and for a split second, I swore I saw a shadow dart from the corner of my vision. My breath caught in my throat. "We need to move faster," I urged. "Just a little further," Martin replied, his gaze locked ahead, filled with unyielding determination. I trusted him, but that trust began to erode when he suddenly skidded to a halt at an unmarked steel door. He turned to me, breathless. "This is it." "What do you mean, this is it?" I asked, panic rising in my chest. "What's behind this door?" Martin gestured hurriedly. "I'll explain later. We need to get inside." He pressed a hand against a panel beside the door, and a soft beep echoed in the air. The door slowly grinded open, revealing a dimly lit room. A bank of monitors lined one wall. People on screen looked disheveled and terrified, just like the soldiers I'd seen moments before that I stepped inside, feeling the thick tension in the air. "What is this place?" I demanded. "This was our operations center," Martin said, moving to a nearby terminal. He began typing furiously. "They documented everything. Whatever's in here can help us understand what happened." My eyes drifted to the screens, less concerned about the details of their operation and more about the new sounds creeping just outside the door. They were getting closer, and that same growl resonated again, this time louder. Panic welled in my throat as I realized we weren't safe yet. "Martin, we don't have time," I pleaded, my heart racing. Suddenly, a metal clang echoed as something heavy slammed against the door from the other side. "Almost done," he called out, though I could hear his own fear seeping into his voice. I glanced back at the door, dread creeping in as the growls became more pronounced. That S when everything went silent. The absence of sound sent shivers down my spine. Martin's hands paused. "What is happening?" I whispered, my breath hitching. "No," Martin muttered, frozen in place. I realized then that whatever had been stalking us was no longer outside. It was in the room with us. The air grew heavier as I registered Martin's words. My heart sank. I turned slowly, feeling dread coil in my stomach. The dim light cast shadows that danced along the walls, but I couldn't shake the feeling that one of those shadows moved differently, as if it had a will of its own. "Martin, what do we do?" I asked, keeping my voice low, afraid of drawing attention. He was staring at the door. "We have to find a weapon," he said abruptly. He scribbled something on a notepad beside the terminal. "There should be supplies stored nearby. We can't wait here." Just then, I heard scratching, like nails on metal, echoing from behind the monitors. I gasped and Martin spun around, eyes wide. "Come on." He darted toward the back of the room, and I followed, my heart hammering in my chest that we rounded the corner to find a small storage closet. He yanked the door open and started rummaging through piles of dust-covered boxes. Please have something," he muttered under his breath. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was in the room with us was watching, waiting for its moment. My fingers brushed against something cold and hard plastic. A flashlight. I grabbed it, flicking it on to cast a beam of light through the gloom. Martin looked up, his face lighting up with a flicker of hope. "Good find. Keep it steady," he said as he pulled out a metal pipe from a box. "This should help if we have to fight." My pulse quickened. Fight what? But I didn't have time to dwell on that. The scratching turned into a thumping noise, louder and more erratic. My breath caught as I turned back toward the door, feeling an instinctual urge to flee. "We need a plan," I urged, but Martin wasn't listening. He leaned against the door, peering through the tiny window set into its steel frame. The panic melted into focus on his face. "Something's out there," he whispered. "Something big." The thumping stopped for a moment, replaced by a wet slapping sound, as if something had smeared against the metal door. I shuddered, imagining the creature's shape lurking just out of sight. We shared a terrified glance. I could see the fear in Martin's eyes reflecting my own. "We can't stay here. We need to keep moving." "Okay, let us go out the back," he suggested. He nodded toward the far wall, where I noticed a dimly lit door that might lead somewhere safer. Before I could respond, the main door bucked hard, the metal trembling under the force of whatever beast waited outside. I jumped, adrenaline coursing through me. "Now," Martin shouted, backing toward the back door. The door rattled violently again, and without thinking, I took off after him. He swung the door open, leading us into another shadowy corridor. Just as we stepped inside, the heavy steel door exploded off its hinges with a shower of sparks and metal shards. We froze for a heartbeat. That's when I saw it, standing in the gaping doorway, an impossibly tall figure, its dark outline shifting unnaturally. My breath hitched as it inhaled deeply, like it was tasting the air for our scent. "Run!" Martin yelled, pulling me down the corridor as the creature prowled into the room. Its growl rumbled through the hallway, a sound that seemed to vibrate in my bones. We darted deeper into the maze of hallways, hearts racing, but the eerie knowledge settled in whatever was chasing us was quickening its pace. We ran hard, the cold fluorescent lights flickering overhead as we maneuvered through the dimly lit corridor. Each echo of our footsteps reminded me of the relentless beast behind us, and I squeezed the flashlight tightly, the beam shaking as I tried to keep it steady. "Where are we going?" I gasped, panting as we rounded another corner. The hallways twisted like a maze, and the darkness seemed to swallow everything behind us. "Just keep moving. We need to find a way out," Martin replied, glancing over his shoulder. I could see the panic in his eyes grow with each step. We came to a junction, and I hesitated, unsure which way to turn. "Left or right?" "Left," he shouted, and I sprinted in that direction. As we moved, the sounds from behind us morphed into a series of thuds, closer than before. The creature was relentless. I pushed myself harder, driven by pure fear. The hall led to a large storage area filled with old crates and gear. It smelled stale, with dust particles floating in the air like tiny ghosts. "Here," Martin said, waving me over to a pile of crates. "We can hide. Maybe we can slow it down." I followed him, my body urging me to stop, but we crouched down behind an enormous crate. My heart felt like it was going to explode. The shadows loomed larger in the flickering light. "What if it finds us?" I whispered, barely able to restrain my shaking. He pressed a finger to his lips, and I could see the determination flicker in his expression. "We need to be quiet." We listened as the thudding approached. Each step echoed with a chilling intensity. The creature was hunting, methodically moving through the hallways. I held my breath, praying it wouldn't find us. Then, just as the growl rattled the air, a loud crash reverberated through the storage area. Martin's grip tightened on the pipe, and my fingers clawed at the floorboards, searching for something, anything, to use as an escape. "What was that?" I whispered, fear stinging my voice. "It's trying to break in," Martin replied, his face pale. We could hear the creature grunting, pressing against the crates. The sound brought a new wave of adrenaline. As I peered around the edge of the crate, I noticed something glimmering just in the shadows, a metal door, slightly ajar. Hope sparked inside me. "Martin, over there." He nodded quickly, and we inchwormed our way to the door. Each noisy creak felt like a death knell. I put my hand on the handle and hesitated, sensing the raw energy of fear. Then everything shifted again. A loud bang made the floor shake, and I felt myself push the door open, adrenaline taking over. We stumbled through into a much darker room. To my shock, I was in a control room lined with monitors, all showing static except one. The screen flickered and then settled, revealing a series of maps and codes. I glanced back at Martin, a question forming in my mind. "What is all this?" "Information," he said, looking around. "We might find something that can help us." But before he could step further inside, the thudding returned, now echoing in an angry rhythm. The creature was closer than ever, and I felt a panic surge. "We don't have time," I cried, looking desperately at one of the screens. "We need to find a way to stop it." That's when I saw it, a large red button labeled lockdown. My instincts screamed at me. What if it worked? What if it didn't? With no time to waste, I took a deep breath and slammed my hand down on it. The lights flickered ominously as the sirens blared, but then the room plunged into darkness. The entire base trembled, and suddenly all the monitors went black. "Did it work?" Martin shouted. I didn't have an answer. Panic coursed through me as the growl intensified, the creature no longer quiet. "We need to find a way out now." Just as I turned to grab Martin, I heard a voice, a whisper that seemed to crawl along my spine. "You shouldn't have done that." I spun around, horror settling in as the full weight of my decision hit me. The shadows shifted, and I realized we had awoken something much worse. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of my rapid breaths. I felt the weight of the room pressing down on me, as if the darkness itself had taken shape. The faint growl was now joined by another sound, a soft rustling, like something slithering through the dark. "Martin, we have to move," I whispered, urgency flooding my voice. He nodded, and we started to back away from the door, estimating the distance to the closest exit. My instincts screamed that whatever we had unleashed wasn't alone. It felt like it was waiting, judging us from the shadows. "Do you trust me?" Martin asked suddenly, his eyes reflecting a steely determination. "Of course," I replied, though I wasn't entirely sure why he asked. "Why?" "Because we're going to need to make a run for it." "Now, where?" I glanced around, but the darkness obscured any possible safety. The control room was a disorienting maze in itself, filled with wires and equipment that made me feel trapped. "Back the way we came. We can double back through the storage until we find a light or another exit," he said. Before I could respond, the growl morphed into a snarl, and the air was heavy with the scent of something rancid. My stomach turned. Something was hunting us, and time was running out. "Let us go," he urged, taking the lead as I followed closely behind. Our footsteps were quiet at first, but as we crossed back into the storage area, they echoed around us like alarm bells. The creature's snarls grew louder, now accompanied by a thudding that made the floor vibrate. The crates around us felt like they were closing in, shifting as if the shadows themselves had become sentient. I glanced back nervously, searching for any sign of our pursuer. Just as I turned, a massive shape lunged from the darkness, slamming into the stacks behind us. The crash sent debris flying, and I stumbled, nearly falling over. "Run!" Martin shouted, already sprinting towards a side door that I had missed in the chaos. The moment I saw it, a flicker of hope ignited within me. We dashed to the door and threw ourselves through, crashing into another dimly lit hallway. This one was narrow and seemed to stretch forever, but the oppressive dark was now punctuated by a faint flickering light at the end. Behind us, the sound of the creature was relentless, a horrid growl echoing through the corridor. It was fast and seemed to gain on us with each passing second. "What is that light?" I shouted as we picked up speed. "Is it another exit?" "I don't know," Martin shouted back, "but we can't stop to find out." As we ran, the flickering light began to reveal its source: a window. It looked out over a massive, empty cavern beneath the base. A series of cables ran across it, glowing ominously in the semi-darkness, but it felt wrong. Something was off. "Keep going," Martin yelled, and I took a leap toward the window. That's when I noticed another figure lurking in the shadows below, watching us. Panic surged through me, and I slammed my palm against the glass. "Martin, there's someone down there." He skidded to a halt, his eyes wide. "What?" "We can't stop." But it was too late. The growl amplified, and the creature was upon us, its towering form blocking our exit. There was no more time to think. I took a deep breath and turned to face whatever horror waited behind. That's when I committed fully to the fight for my life. The dread enveloped us as the beast loomed closer, its shadow stretching over us like a dark promise. My heart raced, and instinct kicked in. "We need to look for something to fight back with," I shouted. Martin was already scanning the room in a frenzy, as if the stray tools could be our lifeline. In that fleeting moment, I spotted a heavy metal rod leaning against the wall, discarded and rusting away like the other remnants of the base. I lunged for it, adrenaline surging as I hefted the impractical weapon in my hands. "Get ready to make a break for it," Martin muttered, tension etched into his features. The growl morphed into a snarl, reverberating through the hallway and shaking the floor beneath our feet. I could feel the heat radiating from its hulking body as the creature charged. We didn't wait another second. Martin bolted first, his legs propelling him toward the flickering light at the end of the hallway. I followed close behind, gripping the rod with a white-knuckle hold. Together, we were a flurry of desperate movement. Propelled by primal fear, we burst into the cavernous room where the cables hummed uneasily. The eerie light flickered from the screens lining the wall, their surfaces filled with static and flashes of vague horror. Whatever awaited us in those depths was still concealed, and as we pierced further into the chaotic expanse, I stole a glance back. The creature pursued, relentless, its growl mingling with the electrical crackle of the machines in a symphony of panic. "Now to the left," Martin shouted, and we veered off the path towards a tangle of old machinery and abandoned crates. It felt like nothing more than a momentary delay, a slender hope we could harness to catch our breath and reorient our bearings. It opened into a massive, open area where the entire ceiling disappeared into darkness. The heavy scent of fear mixed with stale air blanketed us as we huddled together. "Do we hide?" I gasped, panting heavily as adrenaline sang through my veins. "Or distract," Martin replied, his eyes darting across the cavernous space. There was a fire alarm on the wall. An idea sparked. It might just give us the chaos we needed to break free. "Distract it long enough for us to find an exit," he added quickly, like he was reading my mind. With no time to waste, he began to look around for anything that could help. I watched warily as we both searched for anything we could grab, anything that could create a distraction great enough to cover our escape. The creature's growl echoed closely behind us, taunting. That's when I saw an old, rusted canister atop a table nearby. It wouldn't explode, but if it made enough noise, it might give us a brief edge. I shoved it into Martin's hands. He studied the canister, urgency dancing on his face. "I'll throw it. We go left towards the exit." I nodded, and we crept to the edge of the darkness, before preparing ourselves for the sound of doom behind us. Martin hurled the canister, and a clatter erupted as it hit the floor and rolled, sending a crescendo of echoes through the cavern. The creature lunged toward the noise, its silhouette once again blocking the flickering light as it turned. "Run!" I shouted. We sprinted towards the far exit, our footsteps hammering over the concrete, the sound of our escape drowning in our own desperation. Every shadow felt alive, every corner a possible new nightmare beyond the end of our path. See the outline of an exit door up ahead. It lay ajar, beckoning us with renewed hope. We barreled through it, bursting into a narrow hallway filled with dim lights flickering overhead, drumming up a fervor of determination as we pressed on. Suddenly, Martin slammed his hand against a panel, the lights blaring as we raced forward. "I can't believe it's not locking down," I gasped, panting as we turned a corner. "How does this place work?" Martin didn't answer. He was plunging ahead, his drive unyielding. The hallway twisted again, guiding us away from the beast, for now. But just as I thought we had gained a safe distance, we reached a dead end. The doorway was barred shut. The only exit before us fell into darkness with no clear indication of what was waiting beyond. No time for hesitation. "Here," I said desperately, clutching at my resolve. "We have to push this open together. Whatever is in there is better than what is pursuing us." Martin nodded, his expression grim but resolute. We braced ourselves and shoved against the heavy door, adrenaline getting us through the pain of exertion. With a final heave, the door creaked open, revealing an impossibly dark void. A chill settled in the air. "What is this?" Martin whispered. The walls pulsed with an unholy energy, resonating as if alive. Something whispered through the darkness, indistinct yet haunting. I turned to Martin, fear skittering along the edges of my consciousness. This was not the end. These whispers sang of unfinished business, the shadows straining against this world, unwilling to bow out quietly. Just as I turned to voice my concern yet again, a bright light erupted, illuminating the darkness for a fleeting moment. Shapes twisted and reeled as though they had just realized we were there. "Let us go," Martin shouted as the air thickened, almost opposing our movement, an uncanny heaviness that felt like hands clutching at our ankles. That we stumbled through the doorway, and the shriek of metal echoed, the door slamming shut behind us as we fell deeper into the heart of the blackened void. My gut twisted with confusion. Were we still alive, or had we stepped into something unexplainable? One final echo reached my ears, a voice I'd grown all too familiar with. "You should have left." The shadows leapt forth, entwining with us as darkness consumed the edges of our vision. The door we hoped to escape through now sealed. I felt Martin's grip on my arm sweat through his panic, and all I could do was prepare for whatever horror awaited. In the final moments before we were engulfed, uncertainty washed over me. Did we succeed, or had we only unleashed something far worse? I would never know.